What's going on, everyone? Dudette with Dudette Gaming here. Today we're taking another look at Predecessor, and we're going to be getting into a couple more tips and tricks to make you a better brawler on the battlefield. So let's get into it. First off, looking at abilities. Now this one might seem pretty obvious to a lot of people, but every hero has the same amount of abilities. Those abilities are specific to that hero. Not only that, but they are typically designed to benefit one or two different roles within the game. So what I want to encourage first of all is before you even get into game, if you are interested in a certain hero or a certain role and you want to see the different heroes for that role, take a look at the abilities that they do. Make sure you do this before the game. This will help you to not be super confused when you get into the game and not know what to do with your abilities, what progression to unlock them, or how to use your abilities in a fight. So let's look at those couple of things I just mentioned. Your progression of unlocking abilities. Now, we're going to use Bellica as a little bit of an example in this video. Now let's say that you start the game and you head out to whatever lane you're supposed to be playing, and you started with your mana drone. Well, unfortunately, this really isn't going to do you a whole lot of good early game. Now, I'm sure some people can use it effectively, but typically for the typical player, this isn't going to help you at all. All this ability really does is drain a little bit of mana and do a little bit of damage to the enemy whenever they use abilities. So, because the beginning of the game has very little ability use, it's probably not going to help you much at all. So again, that's why it's so important you take a look at your abilities before you get into game, so that you can have an effective build from the beginning right to the end. Now, as you unlock your abilities every time you level up, I want you to pay attention to which abilities you're unlocking. Because if you keep unlocking, if you're Gideon, for example, if you keep unlocking his teleport over and over and over again, sure, you're going to have a good cooldown for your teleport, but your other abilities that actually help you in a team fight are going to fall behind. So make sure that you're picking the right abilities to unlock as you go, typically focusing on damage if you're a mage or a carry, and crowd control if you have it as a support, things like that. So just make sure that you understand the role you're playing and the abilities you're unlocking. Now, how do we use our abilities? Each hero is designed with a general layout of how to unleash your abilities. Let's say hypothetically, a couple of your teammates are in the jungle to your right, and you notice that they need help. So you want to go in and engage. Now we're still going to use Bellica as an example here. If you run into that fight, you throw out your ultimate ability right away, and then you start throwing out your other abilities at random, chances are you're not going to help your team. You're not going to be effective at doing much damage, and you're going to end up getting killed or watching your team die as you run away. That's not what we want. We want to use our abilities in thought out, well-knowing ways. So, with Bellica, for example, you may want to engage, now there's a bit of variation with this of course, but you may want to engage with your mana drone to start lowering the mana of your enemies so you can do more damage later on. Throw out your knock-up ability, throw your bomb wherever the enemy is, because now that they're being knocked up, they're a lot easier to hit with your bomb. And then now, if one of the enemy heroes has low mana, hit them with that ultimate ability and do way more damage or potentially get the kill. It's so much more satisfying when you can use your abilities effectively. So I can't stress it enough. Make sure you know your abilities before you get into a fight and before you even get into a game. Okay, let's move on to the second part. Your build. What I mean by builds is that screen that pops up right away when you jump into a match. Those, as I like to call them, are the cards that you build. As you go throughout the game, killing minions, killing different objectives, killing enemy heroes, you're going to unlock gold throughout the game. That gold aids you in building a bigger deck or a bigger card system so you can be more powerful throughout the game and stay relevant throughout the game. Now, a lot of people, when they first start playing games like Predecessor, they're tempted to just leave it on recommended auto buy. And that's okay for the first little while when you don't know exactly what you should be doing with builds. But as you get further along in the game and come up against more difficult enemies, the recommended build really isn't going to do much for you. Some characters it might in certain situations, but they are just general builds laid out for typical situations. So, without getting too in depth into builds, and we're not going to look at any specifics today, what I want you to do, again, before you even get into a game, look at the kind of hero that you want to play. If it's a mage, if it's a carry, if you're going to be playing offlane, jungle, or support, take a look at the heroes, see what kind of damage they do, or what kind of defenses you should be building, and then look at the cards that Predecessor has to offer. Okay, so let's still use Bellica. If you're playing as Bellica and you want to build your own kit, you finally want to adventure into doing your own card system, but you start building weird stuff like attack speed or different kinds of defenses for yourself, you're going to notice that you're really not effective in the game because you're not building a correct build for the kind of player you've chosen. You typically, if you're a mage, want to focus on ability damage, magical penetration, cooldowns. So take a good look at whatever role you're playing and read through the cards before you get into a game so you can see what a proper build would be. Get excited about it. Think of some different builds, some things that would make you pretty janky and pretty fun in a game. On top of that, each card typically has a different ability in and of itself. Some have a spell blocker that will block an enemy attack. Some of them, like Galaxy Greaves, will make you jump really high, and you can use that to get in and out of fights or to get advantages in different ways. Every card has a different ability that's going to aid you throughout the game. So take a look at what those are. Think to yourself of what would combo really well with other ones. Go online and see what other people are building, and then try it. Now, to close off this section, I want you to remember one thing that is extremely important, and this will honestly give you a massive edge every game. Open up the player menu. I believe it's tab on the keyboard. Open up the player menu, look at your enemy team, and see what they're building. If you're noticing that you're not doing a whole lot of damage to their tanky characters, they're probably building a defensive item that counters the kind of damage that you do. So in this instance, you would want to build a penetration that can use your abilities or your basics, depending on what character you are, to get through their armor. This is what I like to call counter building. You want to counter build what your enemy is building. That way, you can be way more effective. Doesn't matter how they're building, you're building against them. But just remember that they can build against you as well. Now, if you're getting into a longer game, you probably have the chance to build some different things, because eventually you get to a point where you don't really spend your gold anymore if you've gotten that far in the game. If you have, try some different stuff in game. Have some fun. See what you can do. This is a game. Let's have fun with it. But I also want to encourage thoughtfulness before we get into these games. Know your abilities for your characters. Think of the best way to use those abilities and how to unlock them. Check out builds before you get into the game. Counter build against your enemy and be way more effective. Now I want to close this all out with a quick little talk about toxicity. I am, as you've already heard, and I'm beating it like a dead horse, toxicity needs to die in these games. MOBAs are notorious for being toxic games because there is so much pressure and there is so much expectation on every individual in the game. But instead of being toxic, let's promote healthy, fun, exciting atmosphere. Predecessor has a lot of potential and we want to see this game thrive. So let's work together to make the community a very healthy place where newcomers can come to a game and not get flamed by people who've been playing for too long. Where people who've been playing for too long would rather coach other people in-game than rip on them. Let's have fun. Let's promote the game. Let's see where it goes with its future. And let's all get better at the game and continue to work to advance ourselves so we can all be better on the battlefield. All right, that's going to do it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a comment on any suggestions you have, and I really do hope I get to see you guys on the battlefield. Peace.